All right, hello and welcome to Maxim Style Reed Making Day 2. Today we'll be forming a piece of newly made GSP into an actual reed-shaped object, which is going to end up looking just like this. Now, step one is, of course, to make sure that your reed has been soaking for a while. In my case, this piece of GSP has been soaking in water here for about a day and a half. That is plenty long enough to make sure the cane is nice and soaked thoroughly. In general, as long as it's been longer than a day, you are just fine. Here is our piece of GSP from the last video. Now, the tools I will be using today are an easel, or any long piece of wood that you can have a reed on itself, a flat needlepoint nail file, an X-Acto knife, and a mandrel, a forming mandrel to be specific, a pair of reed forming pliers. These ones are great. You can buy them from florists for, I believe, $75. They're great for forming the tube down at the bottom, and some twine that we will pre-soak now. Now, the length of twine can vary, but I like to have it around the length of my arm, so about here. I'll just cut that with the pliers. And then I will soak this in whatever way I can. In my case, because I do not have a good flat water source, I will stick this into a jar with the end hanging out. Let that sink down. There we go. And we will let that soak while we form the reed. I also have this tool that essentially allows me to fold the reed perfectly in half. Depending on the cane that you have, there may already be a center point. Most reeds are 120 millimeters long. This is set to 120 millimeters, and it will essentially fold the cane right in half. Now, step one is called the bevel, and the bevel is essentially the cane that we take off each side in order to make it so that when the tubes fold in half, they are forming a tight and correctly shaped circle. Because if you fold this piece of GSP directly in half currently, it's going to have 2 points touching each other, and there's going to be a very not ideal amount of air leaking through the butt of the reed. So we are going to bevel with a file, and I do a one-sided bevel. Some people like to bevel after they form with sandpaper like this. I like to bevel one side, and what we are trying to do is have each side offset from each other. So you can imagine it like a puzzle piece. If one side is going this way and the other side is going this way, then when they touch each other, they're going to make a straight line. So what we do here is we bevel one side of each side of the tube, and I will do 3, not a ton of pressure, 3 to 4 long strokes on the full end, and then near the end I will start putting on more pressure, and at the very, very butt I will put on lots of pressure, and we'll make a good alternate shape here, and I will show you what that looks like up close. So as you can see, the camera will focus. We have one side angled one way and the other side angled the other way. And that, when they connect with each other on the other side, they will connect and seal correctly. And so I will quickly go ahead and do that with the other side. Oh, that wasn't focused the whole time. Okay, so. All right, so because that was not focused, I'm going to show on the other side what we are going to do is we used to use this tool in the reed room, but I've since moved away. This is essentially a bunch of utility knives screwed together, and you use it by pulling the blades and pushing very hard along the back of the reed. I have since moved to an X-Acto knife, which requires a little bit more technique, but it looks a little bit cleaner, and it can potentially save you from cracks a little bit easier. So last time the camera was in focus, let's hope it is this time since I only have one side left. What I do is I will drag the X-Acto knife, placing mild amount of pressure around where I would place the second wire, and then I will press all the way through the cane down near the back to actually create splits in the cane. And that will help in the forming process with any sort of cracking. I have not gotten this down to a perfect technique yet, as it is fairly new to me. But you will see I will drag the knife through the cane near the back. And the cane will also naturally want to crack as you get towards the center. And I will simply place as many slits in here as I can. So if I bring that up to the camera, we'll focus on that there. Come on. There we go. You can see the slits that I made, and of course, this cane is indeed split off a little bit. And that is the process that I have been doing for now. It has been yielding me pretty good results. Now the next thing I do is personal preference, but I like to do it for my own sake. I will take the cane and I will use my 1000 grit sandpaper, which is here, and I will simply sand the back, and the inside, if you will. And what this does is it get rid of any irregularities that may exist on the inside of the reed, because from this point forward, this is the last time you are going to be able to touch the inside of the reed whatsoever. Once that's done, I'll dip it in some water, and now I will use my folding tool. If you do not have a folding tool, you can measure how long your cane is. My cane is 120 millimeters. You cut that in half. Of course, 120 cut in half is 60. You mark the 60 point, and you can use the edge of a ruler or any sort of flat edge to cut it in half at that point. But because I have a tool here, I am just going to go ahead and use that. There we go. So now I have a nicely, microscopically not perfect, but close enough to where it doesn't matter, reed. The colors line up, everything looks great. And this point forward, we are now in the forming process. So first step, we are going to take some 21 to 22 gauge brass wire, specifically that type of wire only. Get this out of the way so I don't cut myself. We are going to cut a decent length. Anything around this length is going to work. Generally, the length of your finger should be fine. And we're going to put on the first wire. The first wire should be placed as close to the collar as possible. And the way I do it is to rotate counterclockwise. However, if you decide to cross the other direction and rotate clockwise, it doesn't make a difference. So I will cross the right side under the left side, and we'll pull the left side over, pull the right side over, and then at this point, we cross them in the same direction that they're already wanting to go. You can see we have nice crossed wires there, and then I will do a couple hand twists, or just one hand twist. From this point forward, I'll start using the pliers. And now we want this first wire to be fairly tight, but not so tight that it's going to squeeze the tube from side to side, as that will create cinching problems, which will A, prevent you from moving the wire in the future, and B, might cause some issue with the actual forming of the back near the collar itself. So I will pull this wire tight, and then I will twist it until the wire itself gets near the collar. And then what I will do past that point is I will use the back of my flat pliers to press the wire up against the cane as much as possible. That way it is a nice clean shape when it comes out of the forming mandrel. One more twist here. And I will use the pliers horizontally as well to make sure that everything is nice and uniform. And there we have it. That's pretty good. Bring that up to the camera. You can see I have a rotated counterclockwise twist. Everything is nice and clean. The wire's close up to the collar. It's a nice round shape. It's almost perfectly in the center. Now don't worry about that because we can fix that later, but for now, this is great. So the next step is the actual big forming step. So I will clip this wire down. So now it's about that long. And now we get to use that twine that we've been holding in here. I like to run my fingers along it to squeeze out any excess water. And then starting from above the wire, importantly, we are going to wrap around quite a ways above the wire, and then we are going to wrap tightly down, making sure that we pay special attention to be extra tight near that first wire, because the number one place for cracks to form is going to be right down the center near that first wire. And I like to wrap near the bottom, but not going over the bottom, because I find that it will come back to haunt me later. So once that's done, I'll wrap it around the wire so it doesn't get in my way, or in this case, it's wanting to get in my way. We will get our forming mandrel, and we are simply going to very slowly open up the reed from the bottom. So we'll insert the forming mandrel directly into the center of the reed, and we will very lightly, but not weakly, press the reed onto the mandrel, and I will twist it both directions as I go to provide more support. Do not twist one direction only, as that will very easily cause your blades to slip, which means that they'll be offset from each other slightly. If you twist in both directions, then you should be able to offset them both ways, so when you are finished, they are nice and even. And we want the reed to go all the way down to whatever bottom marking you have on your forming mandrel, as that is what will fit most vocals. So in my case, this is getting to the point where it's a little bit too hard for my hands. So I'm going to grab my forming pliers, and I'm going to use the round area in between the pliers to form the back of the reed. And so I will squeeze this lightly to start off to create that round shape that we want near the back. And then I will lightly squeeze in the same way around the rest, going up. But be careful, do not squeeze from the sides anywhere past where you will end up placing the second wire. So for me, that's about here. I'm going to stop squeezing around the sides from this point. I will do a very light squeeze near the first wire to allow the cane to actually create more of a circular seal, but I do not want it to become a circle in that area. Now I will begin twisting it down the mandrel once again, and it gets stuck, which it will keep getting stuck, so you may have to put more force. One more time, and there we go. We've made it to the bottom line. So now I am going to put a lot of pressure, and I'm going to squeeze the very bottom of this tube. Sorry, I apologize if this is off camera, but I need this for more force. I will squeeze the bottom of this tube with not as much force as I can put out, but a lot. We'll just say a lot, as you want the bottom of this to be as sealed and round as possible. Just the bottom. Do not squeeze this hard anywhere near the first wire. Once that's done, I will take the mandrel out of the holder, and then I will begin unwrapping the bottom. You can see we have a nice round tube shape that is sealed near the bottom. Next step will be to put on the third wire, but first I like to do a squeeze on the bottom here just to make sure that the twine was not blocking any area for me to form. There we go. So next up is the third wire. So I will once again cut a finger length piece of brass wire. And we want the third wire to face the same way as the first wire, so we are going to put it on the same way as the first wire is coming towards us. And I will make my third wire the exact same way as I did my first, except of course it is much, much lower to the base. Or the butt, if you will. There we go. We have a nice round shape. Do one finger twist. And now I'm going to put this back on the mandrel just for stability purposes. And the reason I haven't taken the twine fully off is because I'm afraid the center area will start to come apart off the mandrel. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's your decision. It does not make a difference. So I will pull that completely tight, and then I'm going to eyeball it around where I know the third wire sits, which is 1/4 of an inch from the butt. It does not need to be perfect yet because we are not setting it. That will be done in the next day, but we want this third wire to be nice and snug, so we'll pull, twist, pull, twist. We don't want it to be too snug, again, for cinching problems. You can tighten it as much as you want after it dries for a day, but as of right now, the cane is really wet, and it will cinch up from the wire. And not only does that look ugly, but it may affect the sound, so I think this one's actually too tight, so I loosened it just a bit. Now I am free to take the rest of this twine off. We'll set that aside. We will clip the third wire down to mess with later. And now we have a nice and clean third wire. Now the final step for today is going to just be putting on the second wire, which unlike the first and third, it will be facing the opposite direction. Altered my wire a little bit here. There we go. Okay, so I ran out of space there. Luckily I have some more. And we'll put the second wire on. Again, I will eyeball it for now and make it perfect tomorrow. The second wire goes 8 millimeters down from the first wire. Those are the exact measurements that I use, but we will put on the second wire exactly like we did the third and the first. Make sure all of your wires are rotating the same direction. That is important. Okay. Now, what's very important with the second wire is that it is by far the easiest wire to over tighten due to the instability of the middle of the reed here. It is far too easy to over tighten the second wire and cause cinching problems. So you are only going to tighten this until it is flush with the reed. Do not attempt to tighten it anymore. And in fact, if it's slightly loose, that is better than it being slightly tight. You should be able to use your fingers and freely slide it up and down the reed without a ton of resistance. So in my case, I would actually say this is still too tight. So I'm going to do a half turn to loosen it up. And now we can slide it freely up and down the reed. I will place it about where it will be when I finalize the shape, which will be here. And then we are going to clip it. And that's it. We have a formed reed ready to dry out and come back for the finishing tomorrow. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I guess I should show the camera up close, shouldn't I? We have a nice, beautiful blank here. You can see that a crack went down the center and through the first wire. That is fine, as it did not go past the collar. All right, I will see you tomorrow.